even Christian sources sometimes. Like when I was doing a lot of videos, when I was doing like a video every day, I'd be reading these sources, and the Christian sources would be misleading sometimes. You know what I mean? And that was very disappointing to me, because I'm like, if anybody should have integrity when it comes to these issues, it should be Christians.
Amanda, explain why, as a person of
Christians
faith, you feel a need to warn your fellow Americans about Christian nationalism.
Well, thanks, John, for having me on.
I feel like this is so curated, like she's like in a church pew fan. I'm a patriot. I love America. I love capitalism. I love our system. I think it's the best in the world. I think it's the best option that we have right now. I would say I'm a patriot, but Christian nationalism. You want to tackle that one? We're gonna fix everything today.
Ruslan.
Christian nationalism is not Christianity. That is the claim of this video. And I'm curious your thoughts on this, because generally I agree, especially with the tenets that they lay out here. But I think a lot of folks may not agree and may dismiss us as woke.
All right,
here we go.
We are Americans, and Americans kneel to God and God alone.
Hey all, I'm John Avlon, and this is Reality Check on the Extremist Beat. We've got to talk about Christian nationalism, because it's gone from a fringe belief system advocated by a few folks on the far right to an increasingly prominent article of political faith inside the Republican Party. In recent months, it's been celebrated by some of the Trumpiest members of Congress.
We need to be the party of nationalism. And
just to be fair, this is CNN, so there's going to be an angle to it. Right. Just know that.
I'm a Christian, and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists.
The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk.
And that's not all. Christian nationalism also reared its head.
What do you think?
No, that's not right.
Not right?
No.
Church is not supposed to direct the government.
I mean, no, but like I'm thinking about like Romans, I believe 10, I think, or is it 9 or 10? But on top of that, though, like I'd say this, though. I would say that because we're in somewhat of a democracy and just keep it kind of simplified.
Republic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But to simplify, I say, okay, so we do vote based off of our convictions, our personal convictions.
Absolutely.
So I mean, that to me, that's fair. So it's like, if you have more people that agree with your belief, that's just how it works. You know what I mean? So I'd say in that sense, but I don't think that like the Christian's goal is to create a theocracy or something like that. That I don't think is at all what we're supposed to be doing, and I don't think that's what America is.
Okay.
In the January 6th attack on Congress.
Thank you, divine, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent creator God, for filling this chamber with your white light of love.
Now, you might ask yourself, just how different is this really from mainstream Christianity, and how much of a departure is it from politics as usual in a democratic republic? The answer is a lot. So let's clarify our terms here, right? A recent study by the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty listed 5 core narrative beliefs of Christian nationalists. 1. America is...
So here's how they lay out Christian nationalism.
Yeah, that's what I was curious how they define it.
Yeah, this is how the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberties laid it out. So this is a Christian organization laying out what they believe is Christian nationalism.
Okay.
Divinely appointed nation by God that is Christian. 2.
So America is a Christian nation, divinely appointed by God that is Christian.
Why? Yeah, I don't understand how you even get to that. That's extra biblical, right? I mean, America's not in the Bible. So, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think you could say America has Christian influence.
Yeah.
There's some Christian influence to our Constitution, right? All men are created. Is that in the Constitution? Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Yeah. That's in the Declaration of Independence, right? Yeah. So, I think there is that, but to say we're a Christian nation when all those documents are void of any overtly Christian language, what does it even mean to be a Christian nation? Like, say you have a dominant amount of people who believe in Christianity, because if that's the case, I don't know if we're a dominant Christian nation. Like most people, if you look at all the statistics and stuff and what people believe that identify as Christian, most of them have no idea even the foundations of Christianity, and like they believe in like subjective morality. They don't believe Jesus rose from the dead. They believe the Holy Spirit is an it. You know what I mean? So that's the case. We're not a Christian nation at this point. Yeah, depending on how you define it. So I'm ethnically Armenian, and we identify as the first Christian nation. And the vast majority of the public identifies as Christian. The vast majority of the public goes to church. A lot of these places, Armenia, Romania, those places. But if you pulled a random Armenian from the street in Yerevan and you were hanging out and you were like, hey, are you a Christian? They'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then you're like, what is the gospel?
Right. Yeah.
You know, and they'd be like, well, you know, and I think that's that tension there, right? And I feel like Armenia is substantially more Christian than America. Respectfully to my Americans, like, we had one of the apostles plant churches in Armenia, Bartholomew and with two of them, and Jude, right? Like they were martyred there. Yeah. Armenia didn't have a written language until they wanted to translate the Bible to a language, and so we got a written language because of that. So like we're way more of a Christian nation than America, but no, you know, So
America's founders were in fact establishing a nation based on Christian principles, with white men as the leaders.
Why are you gonna throw that in?
With white men as the leaders?
Yeah, that's funny.
That's wild.
So, but I mean, what? And is this a legit statement? Are you sure it's not CNN just being CNN?
It says Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty. Let me Google the organization while you share your thoughts.
Because I'm skeptical, and because it's interesting to me to throw in that race card like that, because a lot of times like the left wants to paint the right as just these white Christian nationalists, you know what I mean? And they're all just these old white men, and that's the only people they care about. That's like the perspective a lot of the of the left when it comes to the right a lot. So that's why I'm skeptical about that. But I mean, I'm not saying it's not true, but I mean, I like to verify my sources with something like that.
Okay, so here is the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty. Founded in 1936, Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty is a national faith-based organization which focuses on upholding the historic Baptist principle of religious liberty. Interesting. The Baptist principle of religious liberty, with a staff of attorneys, scholars, ministers, mobilizers. The Washington, D.C. based nonprofit has a long history of advocating in the U.S. Supreme Court and working with Congress on issues relating to religious freedom and church-state separation. So they have an angle. They have an angle for church-state separation. That's fair. The BGC analyzes new legal cases and legislation within a larger framework of how to best protect the First Amendment right to release freedom for all. In some of its recent Supreme Court cases, yada, yada, yada. So, you know, they definitely have an angle, and this is how they're defining Christian nationalism. Now, if you find someone that is a conservative, MAGA, Christian nationalist, and they're black or they're Hispanic, and there's a lot of those folks, would they adhere to this point, or is this a bit of a straw man?
Yeah. I mean, and that's interesting to me. I mean, I'd like to read where they actually say that, because I don't understand why even throw in white man unless this was written by racists. You know what I mean? So
Now, to be fair, there are black white supremacists. I interviewed one of them, or they called into one of my stream, and there are folks that are black or claim to be black. He wasn't on camera, that legitimately believe that black people, from an IQ standpoint, are a full standard deviation lower than white people on IQ, and that to me is white supremacy. There's no way around that. Like, you believe, you know, and then he tried to make a whole argument for it, and then I literally just debunked the claim and actually looked at what the IQ tests are. So anyway, let's keep watching.
3. Others would be Native Americans, enslaved Africans, and immigrants would accept and cede to this narrative of America as a Christian nation and accept their leadership. 4. America has a special place, not only in world history, but in biblical scripture, especially concerning the return of Christ. 5. There is no separation between church and state.
I think that is probably that part is probably true. And then they're just triggered about everything else.
Because that doesn't even sound. That doesn't even. I mean, if that's serious, it's just so goofy. Like,
Now, in case that sounds like an exaggeration for effect, I want you to watch this clip of an arena full of evangelicals in Atlanta reciting the so-called Watchman Decree.
Whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth, whereas we have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority, whereas we are God's ambassadors and spokespeople over the earth, whereas through the power of God, we are the world influencers, whereas because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy.
Yes, Christian nationalism.
So that to me just sounds like preterist postmillennialism.
That's what I was thinking. It's probably out of context. Like the way that they're using it, my suspicion is that that's out of context too. And I'm not even sure, I'd even be skeptical to hear if they chopped up that order and stuff to make it sound as if he's saying, let's take over the world or something like that. But
let's see if there's a magic bullet here.
It's crying out for a reality check, in part because of its crushing certainty. Look, God knows, good people can disagree about religion. But as Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. And there is precious little evidence that the founders intended to establish an explicitly Christian nation. For example, the Constitution does not mention God, the Bible, or the Ten Commandments. Now, yes, most founders were Christian, and many hoped that religious faith writ large would help maintain an honest, civil, self-governing society. But George Washington notably declined to take communion as president. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were famously committed to religious liberty and the separation of church and state.
I didn't know George Washington refused to take communion as president.
No, I didn't know that either. Yeah,
it's really interesting.
And even the 1797 Treaty of Tripoli, ratified by a Senate full of founders, declared, "The government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion."
Hold on, I got to pull that back. What document did he say?
Ratified by a Senate. Jefferson and James Madison were famously committed to religious liberty and the separation of church and state. And even the 1797 Treaty of Tripoli, ratified...
1797 Treaty of Tripoli.
I haven't heard of it.
Why is that significant?
I think they're citing... Yeah, actually, you keep playing. I think he...
By a Senate full of founders declared...
Okay, it's full of founders. Okay. And it looks like it was written by John Adams.
To religious liberty and the separation of church and state. And even the 1797 Treaty of Tripoli, ratified by a Senate full of founders, declared, "The government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." The United States has seen several waves of religious revival.
My understanding, though, was like a lot of founding fathers were actually more deistic rather than Christian, right? Yeah, from what I understood. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. What's the difference between deistic and theistic? Theistic is a God is distant, he's checked out?
Yeah, basically. Okay. Exactly.
Like there's a God, there's a creator.
God, yeah.
Okay, and theistic is God is present and active.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
That have helped shape our culture in profound ways. But we have also seen waves of immigration that increase the diversity of religious traditions practiced here in America. And evangelical Christianity is a relatively new phenomenon that essentially stayed out of politics as an organized force until the 1970s and 1980s. All of which is to say that just as Americans can be deeply patriotic, but not narrowly nationalist, Americans can also be deeply religious without blurring their faith with partisan politics. Now, George...
Okay, what do you think about that statement? We can be deeply patriotic without being nationalist, which I don't really know the difference. I'm a patriot. I love America. I love capitalism. I love our system. I think it's the best in the world. I think it's the best option that we have right now.
Yeah.
I would say I'm a patriot, but I'm also sober that there are things that we need to do better, and I believe we'll do better.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and this is where it comes down to defining terms a lot. You know what I mean? Because when they say words like nationalist and stuff, there's just specific connotations that are behind the words that are even more emotional than literal in a lot of cases. And I see that with a lot of language that are being used too. It's not necessarily what the words people are using are, because they'll use words that don't, they're not using its like classical kind of sense, you know what I mean? Because they have more emotional connotations. So when they say nationalist, so if you just say like, yeah, I'm a patriot, and if you say, yeah, I'm a nationalist, people are already going to start identifying you as some white nationalist who wants to overthrow and turn everything into a theocracy. You know what I mean? Because that's how words are used. So I want to be careful about the way words are being used in culture, and then be sure we don't give the wrong impression if that's the route you want to take. But
that's good.
Let me discuss this recent rise of Christian nationalism is Amanda Tyler, the executive director of the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty and the lead organizer of Christians Against Christian Nationalism. Amanda, explain why, as a person of faith, you feel a need to warn your fellow Americans about Christian nationalism.
Well, thanks, John, for having me on.
I feel like this is so curated, like she's like in a church pew, fam.
And for covering this really vital topic. Christian nationalism is not Christianity. Christian nationalism is a political ideology and a cultural framework that tries to merge our identities as Americans and Christians. And in the process, it threatens Americans' democracy. It distorts America's promise of religious freedom for all. And importantly to me and to thousands of other Christians, it distorts Christianity, sometimes beyond recognition. And that's because it takes Christianity's central message, which is a gospel of love, and turns it into a false idol of power. It confuses our allegiances to God and replaces it with an ultimate allegiance to country, We've seen the rise of Christian nationalism at different periods in our history, including in the 1950s around the Cold War, where we saw increasingly evidence of Christianity in government speech, such as "In God We Trust" or adding "Under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. So this isn't the first time that we've had efforts to push privileging of Christianity over other faiths. In recent years, we saw former President Trump really
Anyway, I don't care to talk about Trump. So, what do you guys think? Fake news? Is there some sauce on this?
It's hard to say, man, because like there's a lot of stuff that like, and so this is why I try to verify much, because like even Christian sources sometimes, like when I was doing a lot of videos, when I was doing like a video every day, I'd be reading these sources and the Christian sources would be misleading sometimes. You know what I mean? And that was very disappointing to me, because I'm like, if anybody should have integrity when it comes to these issues, it should be Christians. But pushing these agendas and stuff like that makes it hard to trust stuff. So I usually, whenever I hear something, I don't take it at face value anymore. Like, I mean, depending on how important it is, of course, or how much I care. But I'm going to try to look in to like verify the facts. 'Cause I bet you there's some stuff that's missing here, but I've been shocked before. I mean, there's some wild stances from that Christians take on some stuff.
I think the most problematic part is the white men part.
Yeah.
Right? Like sovereignly.
Well, there was a lot of it. Like the Christians even trying to turn everything into a theocracy and have dominion over people and stuff like this.
Well, so no, because here's why I'm not as offended by that, because I think there's two camps that actually hold a dominion theology, and it couldn't be more polar opposite except on this.
Right.
It's the Jeff Durbins, Apologia, Apologia Studios, Dr. James White. What is the other guy's name? There's another guy in that circle. And they do a lot of like post-millennial preterist teaching where they believe revelation has already happened and massive revival is going to break out and yada, yada, yada. Doug Wilson, right? Just like these Calvinist folks all the way on one end of the spectrum. Yeah. And then the other folks is like the Bethel Hillsong. Like they couldn't be polar opposite on everything else. Interesting. But they both hold this dominion, seven mountain theology, right? Have dominion over these. So I'm not mad at like wanting to influence government, wanting to influence education, wanting to influence
is
media.
Different though than, I mean, I think about like give the Caesar what Caesar's, you know what I mean? But I think we still should be the salt and light in the earth, right? You know what I mean? So we still should have some influence in culture because we want to preserve the good. That's what the salt was done in that time. Preserve the good.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then be a light to help shine and be able to guide people.
Amen. Yeah. And then I would say I don't think there's anything wrong with being a patriot. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, man, bro, especially as an immigrant, like, I understand if you're Native American. I understand if you're black and your family came over and they didn't really have a choice or whatever, right? That's in your lineage. You're a descendant of a slave. But as an immigrant that came from the Soviet Union right before it collapsed, bro, I'm ecstatic to be an American.
Yeah.
You know, like I love being an American. I love that I have my passport. Like, so I am extremely happy to be an American. However, that doesn't mean that I think the best Americans have critique and say, hey, we could do better in these areas. You know what I mean?
I think there's danger in people swallowing everything whole all the time. You know what I mean? Because like you figure like if you look at the church, and I remember hearing this, I think it might have been Tim Keller or somebody, but basically like the point is this is like you have like these issues that are biblical, right? So you have issues. So say you take 4 issues like abortion is wrong, same-sex. Our marriage should only be between a man and a woman for a lifetime. We should care about the poor and the marginalized, and we should be against racism. Now you have these 4 issues that are all biblical, right? But you have certain people like this is where I think the problem with the politics and stuff kicks in, because it cuts through and tries to force you to be quiet about 2 of them and vocal about the other 2.
That's good.
You see what I mean? And I think that's where a problem becomes. This is when politics become a sword and a wedge in between just biblical stuff.
Yes.
Because people are going to disrespect 2 of them, push the other 2. Yep. And depending on if you're in Alabama or New York, you know what I mean? And so different places. So that's where I think there's a problem is we've lost focus on actually the gospel. So there is some truth to what they were saying in that sense. But it's bad when you're swallowing everything whole and you're taking a political party or saying, you know what I mean? You can't see any problems in America or and stuff like this, like that. That's when I think you're not taking in enough information and not really actually listening to other people. You just want to dismiss them.
Yeah, and I would say this is where, in my opinion, I think some folks from the just conservatives, I think do themselves a disservice by not addressing more specifically the caring for the poor, more specifically how do we create a society that isn't racist or doesn't have any right. And so I think when you hear like someone like a Matt Walsh, who I am 100% with on issues like abortion and issues like his what is a woman, and then when you hear him speak about racism, he's consistently trying to undermine black conservatives on how different chattel slavery really was. You know, and it's like, bro, this you sound like a goober. Like, and then you see, I watched the Jim Crow documentary. No, was it Jim Crow? No, it was Uncle Tom, the Uncle Tom documentary. And in the Uncle Tom documentary, all these black conservatives are like, conservative party, Republicans don't really care to have us in here. You know, and I'm like, there it is. Like, if you wonder why you're not making more more ground with people that are not just, already on where I am ideologically in terms of conservative Christian, there it is. And so I wish that there was more of that, what you described. And it's not that I think everybody who's a Republican or conservative doesn't care about homeless people and doesn't care about racism. It's just, I think sometimes it's not clearly communicated.
100%. And I was just going to say, because the nuance, like people don't like to engage in nuance there, because it's easier if you can say, there's no, there's no problem here, you know what I mean? Or all the left is all these people who just want to kill babies, and then the right is all these people who are just these racist old white guys who want to take over everything, And so like that's the problem, is people can't engage nuance, because really, I mean, a lot of times the better that I learn subjects and the more I actually listen to other people, the more I realize that there is nuance with some stuff that gets completely dismissed. In fact, if you engage nuance, they'll call you either a white supremacist or woke. You know what I mean? Because people are very binary, and a lot of times people aren't either like they will or whatever. They don't want to take in any kind of nuance and actually really engage with the conversation. It's easier if you can just dismiss everything in one simple category. Yeah.
Somebody said conservative in the view of scripture or public policy. Both, but not. I'm not a conservative on all issues. I think there are certain issues we need to make progress on. I think health insurance, due to your story, right? When you talked about, you had a necessary procedure to get your hearing back. There needs to be some reforms and progress made in healthcare. That doesn't mean I'm for Medicaid for all or Medicare for all, but I think you could be sober and say, wait a minute, let's slow down. And let's say there's an institution that's completely corrupt in many ways. And how can we improve this and make this? That doesn't mean I'm for universal healthcare. If we're talking about education is another one, like education, I think is a big. So I am progressive on specific issues, but I wouldn't identify as a progressive.
All right.
And it said that Simeon blessed God.